As the Reformed view is called unconditional election, meaning by this that there is no foreseen action or condition met by us that induces God to decide to save us, but that election rests upon God's sovereign decision to save whomsoever he is pleased to save.
Okay, and that can get a little confusing because we could also say that God can save whomever he chooses to save, okay? The question is he saving people for no apparent reason, or is he saving people for a reason? In other words, is besides some secret hidden counsel that we can't possibly know about, some unconditional, reason that is not there? In other words, the Calvinists will often say, we just don't know what the reason is. Therefore, can you say with certainty there is no reason based upon our choices or our decisions independently of God that would cause him to show favor to one person over another? When we ask about election, we're talking about, namely, God having favor on somebody. Him choosing somebody over someone else. Matter of fact, whenever we use the word choice, a lot of times we're thinking of kind of the verb form of it, like I made a choice between these options. But if you go into the grocery store later today and you go to the choice meat section, the word choice there is used more as an adjective. It's describing the type of meat. It's the type of meat that is favorable over the other lesser favorable meat. And so when you talk about something that is choice, you're not always talking about necessarily God choosing something for no apparent reason, but you're choosing that meat because it's a favorable meat. There's a reason to have the choice of that meat. And so the question becomes, really in this debate, is does God really favor some people over others? And let's just look at that question.
Okay, so does God favor certain persons over others? So was there a consistency here? What was RC talking about? It's on the little green board. Unconditional election. Okay, so let's go back and let's let him speak for himself here. What was RC talking about?
Arminian.
As the Reformed view is called unconditional election, meaning by this that there is no foreseen action or condition met by us that induces God to decide to save us, but that election rests.
Okay, so there's nothing. We don't do anything that induces God to save us. That's RC's assertion, and that is there is no condition that we fulfill. All right?
Upon God's sovereign decision to save whomsoever he is pleased to save.
Okay.
To save whomsoever he is pleased to save. It is God's choice, unconditional election. That is what RC Sproul was addressing, right? So, can we assume that Leighton Flowers is actually responding to what RC Sproul said? Can we assume that? I mean, if Leighton wants to go, I was just playing it for the fun. It was just nice background stuff. Gave me a chance to take a drink of water. No. Obviously, he wants people to think that he's responding to the great RC Sproul. So you would think he's responding to what RC Sproul actually said, which is about God's choice and his assertion that God's choice is not based upon man's actions. Okay? So far, so good? Why do I have to belabor that? Because we're dealing with Leighton Flowers. And because Leighton Flowers can change the meaning of any word he wants to, even when they're his own words in his own video. That's what he's done here, accusing me of misrepresenting him when the context of his own words is exactly what I said it was, without a doubt. Okay? Anybody that can do that, you've got to establish every single. I don't expect him to believe this. I don't expect him to. He's going to leave that article up. He's going to be quoting from it 3 years from now. I realize this is what you're dealing with Leighton Flowers. That's just. Look at his videos. Look how many. I mean, the description that is given is former Calvinistic professor explaining why Calvinism is not biblical. That's Former Calvinist professor explains why Calvinism is not biblical. That's the actual title to his video page. And I'm on that video page all over the place. All over the place. Okay? So, that's what RC is talking about. Let's listen carefully.
And that can get a little confusing because we could also say that God can save whomever he chooses to save, okay? The question is he
How? I would be really interested in knowing how that works. Can God save anyone he chooses to save? How? Is he not dependent, in Leighton Flowers' perspective, upon the autonomous free will act of the man? Does not God desire to save everyone? Is not God trying to save everyone? So how can you say God can save whoever he wants? How would that work? I would like to see how that would function.
Saving people for no apparent reason, or is he saving people for a reason? Okay,
now this very, very important, and pull that down for just a second because I took the time. There it is. And let me go there. Oh, I don't like that. That takes over, unfortunately. Take that out. And if that's big enough to focus in on it, that would be good. Okay, I took the time to transcribe this whole thing. Whatever. The question is he saving people for no apparent reason, or is he saving people for a reason? Stop right there. This man claims to have once been a Calvinist. I have been contacted by at least half a dozen people, a couple of which worked for him during this period of time, who have said, no way. No way. I knew him then. He wasn't a Calvinist. He was, no way. I hope that's the case. I really hope that, because if he really was, then he is guilty of constant misrepresentation of his former belief. Constant. Every single video. It's that bad. No Calvinist believes that God is saving people for no apparent reason. What we're saying is God is not saving people based upon their actions, their fulfillment of any conditions or anything else. He has a reason. It is to the praise of his glorious grace. And that's the greatest reason there ever has been. That's greater than any human reason that could be given. But it's just constant with him. Just constant. He can't get away with it. Get away from it because he has one understanding of Calvinism. It's an errant one. It's wrong, but that's what he's refuted. And that's all he can refute. He can't refute the real thing, so he refutes the straw man. There you go. So, is he saving people for no apparent reason, or is he saving people for a reason? In other words, besides some secret hidden counsel that we can't possibly know about. See, this is consistent throughout Flowers' material, is that he rejects the existence of God's decree. I don't know how God creates without a decree. I don't know what gives consistency. I don't know what basis he grounds God's future knowledge without that decree. That's one of the maddening things about trying to deal with Leighton Flowers and why I try to avoid dealing with Leighton Flowers. If you listened to his encounter with Chris Date on Unbelievable, that was the thing that was so maddening, is that he doesn't take a stance. Well, Mullinism, and in fact, I am convinced that if the Baptist faith and message of the Southern Baptist Convention did not preclude open theism, if it left the door open for open theism, the consistent theology, especially his assertion that man in his autonomy can create actions independently from God. That is so in perfect harmony with open theism. I am convinced that if it would not result in his losing his job, he'd be an open theist. That would be, he doesn't believe it's heretical. He obviously has warm feelings toward open theism. And I think he knows in his heart of hearts, man, I wish I could be an open theist. Well, maybe he will be someday. But the point is, he doesn't say, well, it could be simple foreknowledge, it could be this, it could be that, it could be, who knows, He doesn't take a position. So it's easy for him to attack someone who isn't taking a position because he hasn't taken one. So we're standing over here on this hill that we have defined, and we say this is important, and he rushes the hill, and you fight him off, and then he runs off to another hill, and then you try to attack him over there, he runs off to another hill. You can't fight an opponent like that because he won't take a position on this very issue. So it's real easy to say, oh, no. You can't say that. Oh, no, you can't say it. You're wrong about this. It's real easy to do that when you are not yourself having the integrity to put a stake down and say, here's what it is. Here's what the Bible's teaching. That is maddening, but it's part of the process of dealing with this quote-unquote traditionalism. So hidden counts that we can't possibly know about, some unconditional reason that is not there. Okay. In other words, the Calvinists will often say, we just don't know what the reason is. To the praise of his glorious grace, the glorification of the triune God. If you are a Calvinist, you know this. But you are so focused, Leighton, upon humanizing all of this. It's all on the human level. There can't be a divine level above your great intellect's understanding. It's all going to be on the human level, you see? So the Calvinists will say, we just don't know what the reason is. In other words, it's not a human reason. It's not a creaturely reason. It's not a reason that is identifiable on the nice little simple plane of creatures. But if you had been a Calvinist, if you had had any knowledge of what you believed, then you would have known that the much higher reason, deeper, more lasting, valid reason is the decision of Father, Son, and Spirit to glorify themselves and redemption of a particular people through the incarnation, the outpouring of the Holy Spirit of God. We have a Trinitarian gospel. We have a human gospel. It's very much human gospel. All focused on man, not upon God's purposes. He continues, therefore, can you say with certainty, there is no reason based upon our, what's the next word, folks? Choices. Our choices. See, I had people running around yesterday, well, Jesus is the chosen person, and we're choosing him, and see, you're misrepresenting him. This is what he said, folks. Every single one of you running around in Twitter yesterday with your hair on fire, you're misrepresenting Leighton Flowers. Look at his words. I kept saying to all of you, would you just read the transcript? I took the time to type it out. Would you read it? Not a one would. Nope. No, you're just a mean, terrible, horrible, arrogant, nasty person. Therefore, can you say with certainty, there is no reason based upon our choices or our decisions, and please note the next phrase, independently of God. Independently of God. This is the Flowers. We are autonomous creatures. We can create realities and decisions unknown to God. Again, how does God know the future? How does God know the future in this system? This is the very essence of open theism. That the free creature can independently of God act in such a way, and that's why God can't know. He would make the perfect open theist. And I think the only reason he is not. I would love to see, where has Leighton Flowers put out a video on the errors of open theism? Is that out there, anybody? Could someone look at the Soteriology 101 thing? Is there a I'd love to see the video on the errors of open theism from Leighton Flowers' perspective. Because foundationally, He's right there with them. He's right there with them. Independently of God. So, our choices, our decisions, independently of God, listen, that would cause him to show favor to one person over another. Those are his words. They are not my words. They are not my interpretation of his words. They are his words. That is the context of the choice meets analogy. And he created it. And he did so in response to R.C. Sproul, who specifically was saying it is God's choice, not man's choice. It's unconditional election. It's God's freedom. And he's saying it's man's freedom. It's our choices independently of God that cause God to show favor to one person over another. Those are his words. That's the context. This debate is done. Every accusation he made has just been proven to be an absolute bold-faced lie. All you got to do is stop the tape long enough to type the words out and put them on the screen. Stunning. It's right there. How can you... Pure documentation. Any of you can sit there and say, oh, you're misrepresenting him. You aren't living in this world. What color is the sky in your world? You are not dealing with things honestly or truthfully or rationally. There's no way to have a conversation with someone who, faced with this evidence, go, oh, nope. So, one more time. Our choices, our decisions, independently of God, that would cause him to show favor to one person over another. You know, when we ask about election, so he's unconditional election choices, he's conflating them. When we ask about election, we are talking about mainly God having favor on somebody, him choosing somebody over someone else. So he's putting choice, election, favor, he's conflating all of them. Matter of fact, whenever we use the word choice, a lot of times we are thinking of kind of the verb form of it. Well, let's stop right there. Yeah, this is why we challenge Flowers exegetically, and he answers with analogies. Because he doesn't do exegesis. He didn't do exegesis in the debate on Romans 9. He doesn't do exegesis at all. When he was on Unbelievable with Chris Date would present scriptures, he'd present stories. He'd give a scripture and then tell a story. He doesn't do exegesis. It ain't his thing. So here's the problem. The only meaningful way to talk about terms like election, choice, and favor is from the inspired words of Scripture, not from your analogies in English 2,000 years later. But that's what he's doing. That's what he does right here. Do we hear anything about kaleo? Do we hear anything about the substantival forms? Do we go into Ephesians 1 or Romans 8 and 9 when Paul says, I endure all things for the sake of the elect, the chosen? Do we have any? Do we go in there and look at those terms in the original languages so as to have some idea? No. Instead, well, a lot of times we are thinking kind of the verb form of it, like I made a choice between these options. But if you go into the grocery store later today, now, folks, I didn't force Leighton Flowers to come up with the choice meats analogy. I had nothing to do with it. He's going to have to live with it. He's stuck with it. The memes themselves are so good. And I am going to Arby's after I get done here because they've got the meats. I'm going to take a picture. I'm going to take a picture of my double roast beef sandwich. I'm going to do it for two reasons. Because they've got the meats. Because yesterday, Jeff Durbin said Arby's is of Satan. There is now division in the leadership of Apologia Church over this very issue of Arby's. Jeff, you're just wrong. I have challenged Jeff to a public debate on the issue of the godliness or satanic origin of Arby's. And I'm going to prove my point today by going to Arby's. But I didn't force him to do this. I had nothing to do about him deciding, if you go into the grocery store later today and you go to the choice meat section, the word choice there is used more of an adjective. It's describing the type of meat. It's the type of meat that is favorable over the other less favorable meat. Now, would you stop laughing in there? I'm trying to be serious. Well, not really. I was earlier, but I just had to let the blood pressure drop a little bit. It is stunning that someone with a doctorate who teaches in a Christian school would make an analogy like this and not recognize the utter impropriety of not only switching verbs and nouns to adjectives, but pretending that doing this in English is a valid way of handling the Bible. Okay? There's no defense of this. There's none. It's absurd. If you're taking a basic level, graduate level, undergraduate level hermeneutics class, red mark right through that one. But this is Professor Flowers who's making that kind of error. And it is an error. Plain and simple. But I'm not the one. I didn't put a gun to his head and say, you need to say that the type of meat that is favorable over the other less favorable meat. I didn't make him say those words. And now he wants to, that doesn't mean, really, though, that God shows favor based upon us being better meat. Okay. Well, let's see what he went on. And so when you talk about something that is choice, notice now the description rather than verb, it's moved away. See, God doesn't do anything. God is controlled by man. Man makes choices. Man becomes choice by his choice. And that then means that God responds to man's actions. So when you talk about something that is choice, you are not always talking about necessarily God. See, he's still thinking God here. He's still thinking election. The context has not changed. Not always talking about necessarily God choosing something for no apparent reason. That is, God would never do anything based upon his own will, his own perfect desire to accomplish his own glorification. His God doesn't have that. But you're choosing that meat because it's a favorable meat. So we're in the context of the choice of people here. There's a reason to have the choice of that meat because it's better than the other meat. So the question becomes really in this debate, I think there's only one really. I think I may have typed that wrong. Sorry. The question becomes in this debate, does God really favor some people over others? Are they choice meat? Now, he might want to say, oh, no. I didn't mean that. Why don't you just come straight out and say, wow, that entire analogy stunk. I stunk it up, and you caught me. I withdraw it. That would have been the easy thing to do. But no, you had to double down. Oh, I'm the one misrepresenting. You took it out of context. Didn't take anything out of context, Leighton, and just proved it to any semi-unbiased person. Now, I know there are people out there, they're watching this, and I don't like how he's talking, and he's saying mean things, and anybody who is controlled by their emotions, and that's a large portion of people today, I get it. And if they're the people you're going for, they're all yours. because they're not going to like anything I have to say anyways. But any honest-hearted person who is rational in their thought, that looks at the facts and goes, you said this, you said this, you said this. Yep, that's what you said. There was no misrepresentation. Period. End of discussion. It's done. Done. That's all there is to it. You can say, well, over here I said so, and in this video over there I said so. Then why'd you say this? This is the context. These are your words. These are your words.